I mean, is it Saturday yet? Week 13 on tap in the college ranks. Cincinnati, your newly minted number 4 in the country, laying 2 touchdowns against East Carolina. Can't let up now. Finally on the inside of the conversation. Georgia going to take on Georgia Tech, laying 35 on the road. Last time to Tech, they covered that number. Ohio State, Michigan in the game. The Buckeyes still 8-point favorites on the road against number 5, but those two teams and that result, big times CFP implications. Then it's the Iron Bowl, Alabama, Auburn, 19.5-point game in that one. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State perhaps offering us some bedlam. We take the talk to the QB room where our signal callers are standing by. CBS sports football analyst Brady Quinn and Danny Cannell in the mix. Gentlemen, when a rivalry matchup is referred to as the game, it's the only place we can start. It's Michigan and Ohio State at the Big House with the Wolverines trying to do what they haven't under Jim Harbaugh, and that's beat their rival. Big-time CFP implications on top of it all. Brady, Buckeyes are laying 8 on the road, total 64.5. What does your homework tell us about this one?
Well, it tells me that the Buckeyes should be able to dominate this matchup. The only thing standing in their way is the possibility that David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson could wreak havoc. They're tied for the lead league in the Big Ten in sacks this season, and they could be menaces. And I'll be honest with you, too. C.J. Stroud has been playing from clean pockets almost the entire season, and he's been able to utilize a lot of those talented wide receivers somehow that aren't Blitnikoff finalists. Even though you've got Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, none of those guys made as a finalist for the Blitnikoff somehow, but still extremely talented. There'll be a mismatch no matter who Michigan puts on in the secondary. It really comes down to whether or not you can protect C.J. Stroud. Because if he doesn't play from that clean pocket, pressure does get to him. He completes about 73% of his passes from a clean pocket. Under pressure, 53%. It drops dramatically. So that's going to be the biggest key in this matchup. I don't think that pass rush is going to be able to get after the Ohio State quarterback, but really past that gigantic offensive line that they've got. So I've got the Buckeyes. I think you lay the 8 points. Don't even think about it. They'll probably end up winning this one by 2 scores. I do think it'll be a high-scoring game, though. Cade McNamara has been a little more prolific over the past few games. And I think Michigan will have their moments, too, scoring some touchdowns, running the football, throwing the football. But, Danny, that's how I feel at least. It's going to be the Buckeyes all the way.
So I actually love the other side of this one. Give me the home dog in a rivalry game, and the fact that it's over a touchdown here at 8. I love that aspect because I do think Ohio State will win this game, but this game has been tight a few times. I know they've gotten sideways too. I think this is one of Jim Harbaugh's better rosters that he's put up against the Buckeyes. And you mentioned a couple things. I think Hutchinson and Ojabo on the outside with 10 sacks apiece, I think they will be able to get to C.J. Stroud. And you mentioned it, like he's been very comfortable, and it's a different game. Any quarterback, I don't know how great they are, even Tom Brady, they can look pedestrian if you get after them and you can pressure them. I think they'll have some success. And the other thing, too, is I don't think Ohio State has faced this much of a physical team since the Oregon Ducks, the teams that this committed to the run game and just going to say, line it up, and we're going to run it down your throat. So I think Michigan has a chance to do that. Cade McNamara's development through really started in the Michigan State game, and I know it was a loss, but for him to have a big game throwing the football at least made this offense where you have to respect the pass game. I think that helps Michigan. I am on the same page with you in the high-scoring game. Like, I do think this will go over the total. I think the Buckeyes, you can impact C.J. Stroud and you could rattle them a little bit, but I don't think you're shutting them down. But I also think this Ohio State defense, which made an awful lot of changes since that Oregon team, has not been challenged physically. They're the way they're going to be challenged in this game too. So I'll take the Wolverines, the home dog, but I'm also on the over as well.
I mean, we're 2 recruiting cycles in here for Coach Harbaugh, and this is the day.
This is time.
This is the day that you measure a Michigan man. We'll see how it plays out.
Time. Meanwhile, guys, let's head to the SEC. 86th edition of the Iron Bowl this Saturday between Alabama, Auburn. 3:30. You can watch it on CBS. Bama down 1 spot this week to number 3 in the rankings, jumped by Ohio State. Auburn is unranked. A ranked Alabama team has not lost to an unranked Auburn team since 2002. Crimson Tide favored by 19.5 on the road, number set at 56. Danny, let's start with you. What do you like in this one?
Steve, I'm going to go ahead, again, similar theme, home dog. This number is really big. Like, that to me is and I know why it's big, right? We saw Auburn lose to South Carolina. They lost Bo Nix for the season. TJ Finley is in there. But they still have Tank Bigsby, who I think if Alabama's been susceptible to anything, it's been the teams that are more physical up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Like the LSU gave them fits. Arkansas gave them a pretty good run for their money. Florida gave them a run for their money. The only thing that concerns me about Auburn is have they thrown in the towel on the season? But I'm banking on the fact that this is a rivalry. A lot of these players have played against each other in high school. There's an anger and animosity there that shows up with a home crowd that'll say, hey, this could salvage our season, which has been underwhelming at best. So I'm going to take the Auburn Tigers. I'm staying away from the total. I have no idea. I thought I would lean towards the under, but I thought last week's Arkansas-Bama game would be under 2, and that went way over. So I'm going to stay away from the total and just say, give me the home dog, 19.5. That's too many points for me.
Danny, I'm with you as far as taking Auburn on this side. I mean, look, Alabama's been playing with fire at times. I mean, last week they had no business keeping that game as close versus Arkansas. But there you see the final score, a one-score game. And I think this one could be closer to, in part because Brian Harsin knows if he's going to be able to pull off the upset in a rivalry game in his home stadium, they're going to have to run the football. Tank Bigsby had a big game last week, over 160 yards rushing and a touchdown. With TJ Finley at quarterback, though, that's the only hard part is he really doesn't bring the same type of prolific passing ability that Bo Nix did, or even just the ability to buy time, create, make some bigger plays downfield. So that's probably going to be the difference in this game. But I think where Auburn will be able to keep it close is all year long, Bryce Young has had to make up for what has either been poor offensive line play up front or just bad scheme. I mean, teams week in and week out have been able to get pressure on Bryce Young. Fortunately, he's such a good athlete. He's been able to make throws on the run, step up, move in the pocket, and make some big chunk throws downfield to Jamison Williams and John Mechie. So, look, Alabama wins this game. I mean, they're not looking past this to the SEC championship, but let's be real. If they go up by a couple of scores, I don't think Nick Saban's going to risk putting Bryce Young or any of their star players or starters in harm's way, knowing that they have the West locked up. It's really about looking forward to that next matchup versus the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC championship game. And the only other thing that makes me think that Alabama might get off to a slow start in this one is that was a physical game last week versus Arkansas. You know, they like to pound away running the football. I do think there might be a fair amount of just this late in the season, a physical matchup like that. You might be trying to coming away with that still, trying to recover against another tough challenger in a rivalry game versus Auburn.
Yeah, very interested to see how that defense comes out, what sort of intensity they run out of the locker room with after a lackluster effort against Arkansas. Elsewhere, guys, we got Georgia Tech. Barely a rivalry, but for the purpose of our conversation, let's go with it. Just some clean old-fashioned hate. Danny, last time the Dogs made the trip to Atlanta, they won by 45. 35 is the number this go-around. Total set at 54.5. What's your feel between these two on Saturday?
Let's go ACC. Come on, shock the world. All right, I'm not going that. I am going to take Georgia Tech in the points. I mean, again, I have a theme very clearly. The home dog I like. 35 is a big number against a Power 5 opponent. And Georgia's done it before. But similarly to what Brady was kind of talking about with Alabama, Georgia's mind isn't focused on – they don't need style points. So they have no incentive to leave out the starters out there on the defense or offensive side of the ball. Their mindset is SEC championship, national championship. Let's just get out of Dodge. Let's get this game under our belt, and let's win it and move on. Georgia Tech, meanwhile, they've got everything to play. This is the recruiting battle. This is one where Jeff Collins has to tell his team, hey, you're going against the best. I think they'll get out there and they'll give them the best. I don't think it's anywhere close to coming anywhere near to get this game to where they have any chance of an upset. But I do think they could be, it's one of those backdoor cover situations. I'll say 42 to 10, somewhere in there, where it's going to be close to the spread, but a backdoor cover will get you this one. And I'll go the under too, because I don't see any scenario where Georgia Tech puts up a bunch of points to push this one over. This one probably to me is my least favorite. I would stay away from this game, but if I was going to take it, I'd take the home dog and the under with that Georgia defense.
I'm right there with you. You take the under. And here's the other thing is, like, it's not like Georgia's playing to impress the College Football Playoff Committee. I mean, they're pretty much cemented at a number one spot. Even with a loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game, they're probably not falling out of the top 4. They'd probably fall to number 4. And then you'd see Ohio State slide up to number 1, Georgia to number 2. So that way we don't have to rematch essentially those, two, Georgia and Alabama squaring off again in the semifinal game. But I love what you said, Danny. I'm on the side of Georgia Tech here, but actually for the opposite reason of what you displayed. I actually think it's the fact that it's Georgia knowing they're going to play in the SEC championship game against Alabama that at some point is just going to say, hey, Let's start putting in our seniors. Let's start putting in some of our other guys who we want to get some reps and some chance to get on the field before their career is done here. Because after this, it's all business, all right? We got the SEC championship game and then the college football playoff to play for a national championship. So you're probably not putting on a lot of those guys who are walk-ons, seniors, in places like that. This is the opportunity to do that. So when they put those guys in the fourth quarter, that's where Jordan Yates, Georgia Tech, Jahmyr Gibbs, they'll get a little bit of their burn time too. So I'm with you on the under. I think actually that's the best play here. But also take the 35 points and Georgia Tech. I think Georgia's going to be looking on after a strong first half to that SEC championship game.
You know, fellas, with Oregon losing this past week, big opportunity now opened up for the Big 12. They've got 3 teams in the top 10 right now, and 2 of them go head-to-head this weekend, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. The winner puts themselves in a nice position to make a case for the top 4 when all is said and done. Cowboys right now favored by 4, the total set at 50. Danny, what do you think of this one?
So, Steve, I've had a home dog theme. I'm going to go with the home favorite here. And I'm going to go with what my eyes tell me from watching the film the last few weeks. Oklahoma State is a program that's trending in the right direction since they lost to Iowa State. And Oklahoma is a program that's kind of searching for an identity on offense. They're playing both quarterbacks. Caleb Williams is struggling with confidence, and they have been sputtering on the offensive side of the ball. And I think Oklahoma State with Spencer Sanders at quarterback, he's been gaining more confidence. And this quietly has been one of the better defenses in the country. And that compares to Cincinnati, Georgia. You call out the defense. This is one of the best ones in the country. I think they're playing with an incredible chip on their shoulder because all the talk has been about Oklahoma all season long. Mike Gundy has this team playing great football. So I'm going to go ahead and take Oklahoma State, lay those points, and I'm also on the under. I saw it was a little bit higher before when I gave it, but I'll stick with it under 50. I think Oklahoma's defense is pretty good too. That's the sad part for Lincoln Riley. He finally has a championship-level defense, and he can't figure out the offense and the quarterback. So I do think it'll be lower scoring, but I think Oklahoma State wins by a touchdown at least.
This was probably the toughest game for me to pick, in part because I've seen Oklahoma so much this season up close and personal. I think what you saw is, and Danny touched on it, the growth of that defense over the course of the year, in particular up front. You saw guys like Isaiah Thomas last week, for example, who had a big-time game. Redmond as well, who had a return for a touchdown. I mean, that defensive front has really started to step up and put pressure on opposing quarterbacks. The problem is Oklahoma State doesn't really throw the football that often. They like to pound away running the football at Jalen Warren, control the game in that way, and then obviously play good defense, as Danny touched on. This game will be won and lost, though, on third down. There's no one better in the country than Oklahoma State defensively on third down, getting off the field. And that's where Oklahoma has struggled the past couple of weeks. They're 3 for 19. And they went from being the top team in the Big 12, now the second team in the Big 12 because of these recent struggles. Look, I think Caleb Williams kind of lit a spark for this team when he took over. You're now starting to see some of those growing pains that he's going through. His teams are scheming him up, and just his style of play in particular, confusing him a little bit after the snap of the football, disguising coverage, disguising pressures. That plays right into what Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator for Oklahoma State, wants to do. So go ahead, lay the 4 points with Oklahoma State here. They're going to control this game with the ground attack as well as that nasty, stingy defense.
All right, guys, we got to talk about the newly minted 4th-ranked team in the nation. Still some work out in front of them. Saturday, Cincinnati's going to make the trip to East Carolina, and we've seen it before where a team wins a big game, even this season, gets into the college football playoff picture only to misstep. Brady, Bearcats laying 2 touchdowns. What sort of resistance do you see them facing here on Saturday?
Well, look, Keaton Mitchell's over 1,000 yards rush for East Carolina so far this year, and Holden Naylor's had a great game last week. Threw for over 400 yards and then a few touchdowns versus Navy. And they're on a 4-game win streak. The reality is this, though. Cincinnati kind of got back on track after kind of eking by the previous 4 games. They ended up drumming SMU, and I really thought that was going to be a team that could potentially challenge Cincinnati because of Tanner Mordecai and that prolific passing attack. Wasn't the case, and I don't think East Carolina is going to be the case either. You lay the 14 points. You don't worry about this one because really the next greatest challenge for Cincinnati is going to be in the AAC championship game versus Houston. They know that, and they know they still have to continue to keep impressing because as much as we don't want to admit it, Notre Dame's out there with 1 loss on the outside looking in. And Cincinnati knows they can't slip up and they can't allow potentially another team to make a case for the optics or the eye test, whatever the College Football Playoff Committee wants to use to hold it against a group of 5 teams. So this is more like when you start that class with an A, it's kind of hard to keep it. Well, Cincinnati's got to figure out how to keep this spot at number 4 so they give themselves a chance for playing for a national championship, Danny.
Yeah, to be honest, I think this number's really tight. Like, I look at it, I think it'll probably be a 2-touchdown game. If it was 14.5, I'd like my side a little bit better. Again, I'm going with the theme, the home dog. East Carolina's won 4 games in a row. They're playing with a bunch of confidence, and I know Cincinnati's won 11 in a row, and they've been the hotter team out there. But I go back, and I know SMU was impressive, but this is a team that's been asked to impress with the eye test, and I don't know if it's impacted them. I don't know what it is mentally about them, but there's some part of me that wonders if Cincinnati's like, man, we're so close. Just don't screw it up. And if you play that way and you're not just loose and carefree and playing with all kind of confidence, that is not a good place, a good space to be in. So I'll take East Carolina. I do think Cincinnati wins, and it'll probably be right around the 2-touchdown number. So I don't love this one, but I'll go ahead and take the Pirates playing at home. And again, every time you're Cincinnati, it's much like you get if you're Alabama and Georgia, except this is in the American Conference. You get every team's best shot. It's their chance, their Super Bowl. They know a lot of eyeballs are going to be watching them too. So I'll take East Carolina.
And that one is going down on Friday. So from when the turkey hits the table on Thursday to the end of the weekend, we got a full plate.
Yeah, we certainly do. That's on Friday. Saturday night, number 6, Notre Dame still has an outside shot at getting into the college football playoff. Brady, you were just talking about that. It's not likely, but it's not impossible. Fighting Irish on the road this week at Stanford. They're 19-point favorites right now. The over-under set at 52.5. Danny, are we sticking with the home dogs theme, or are you comfortable with that 19 points for Notre Dame?
Well, Steve, so you don't know this because we usually do our show, a little bit earlier, and it's Thanksgiving week, so we're a little bit out of schedule. But, Notre Dame, they get out of the ACC, and now I got to back them. Like, they've been going through that gauntlet of the ACC schedule. Now I'm going to go ahead and say, go ahead and lay those points. I don't care about Stanford playing at home. It's probably the worst home field advantage in the country. It'll be dead. There will be nobody there except for the Notre Dame fans that show up. And you mentioned it. They are the one team on here. We talked about Alabama doesn't need to impress, just win. Ohio State, Michigan doesn't matter, just win. All these teams, even Cincinnati, is like just win and you're kind of controlling your own destiny. Notre Dame is the team this weekend that needs style points because guess what? This is the last opportunity. This is their last resume builder without being in a conference. So I'm laying the points. I'm laying the 19. I think this easily goes over. They've been calling their number the last few weeks. I mean, they put up 55 against Georgia Tech, 0 points they held them to. I think this will be a similar outcome. I'm going with the under. I just wonder if there's also a part of Brian Kelly that is a classy coach that'll call off the dogs at some point, which I'll lean the under. But if I like to just lay the points, take the Fighting Irish more than the total because I think they can call their number essentially versus a Stanford team that's struggling this year.
You're not laying off the dogs. Not when you're number 6 and you got to keep doing things to impress the college football playoff.
Run it up.
Look,
he's classy.
This Stanford team. He is classy, but that doesn't mean you can't put up 55 points in 3 quarters and then you go ahead and play the backups for the 4th quarter. I mean, look, the reality is this. Stanford is just woeful offensively this season. They've lost 6 straight. They haven't scored more than 15 points, probably about 4 games. And look, Notre Dame's defense has come along. I was concerned when they lost Kyle Hamilton for the rest of the season, but they've got enough depth there. They've recruited and developed well where they've been able to overcome that. And that defensive front, led by Isaiah Foskey in particular, is just absolutely nasty. It was a young group on offense that continued to grow up and get better and better. Jack Cohn has solidified himself as the guy with Tyler Buchner being the changeup at the quarterback spot. But the rushing attack, the stable of backs with Kyron Williams, obviously you see Chris Tyree, but Logan Diggs, the way he's come along too, and the best tight end in the country. Look, I know he wasn't a Mackey finalist, but that's their problem, not anyone else's. No one's been able to cover Michael Mayer all year. Stanford's not going to be able to either. Notre Dame's going to put up a huge number in this one. You lay the 19 points, but as Danny kind of touched on, I think the under here too, though, in part because how both teams want to run the football, that should shorten the game a little bit. But I could see this thing getting out of hand, something like 48-3, 48-10, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, but no calling off the dogs. Brady Quinn, if he was under center for Notre Dame still, he wouldn't call.
If you're going to be classy in the college football playoff.
That's right. Brady Quinn, Danny Cannell, thanks so much, guys, for the insight. Coming up, well, I'll tell you what's coming up in just a second. But first, let's recap these picks. Danny and Brady agreeing on quite a bit. Agree Auburn, agree Georgia Tech. agree Oklahoma State and Notre Dame. The difference, Danny takes Michigan, Brady, Ohio State. Danny likes East Carolina to cover, while Brady likes Cincy minus the points.